What's up, legends, and welcome back to another Unmatched First Impressions video. Today we're talking about the second of three heroes for the new Unmatched Marvel King and Country set. We have Black Panther today, who has one of the most aesthetic card art collections in the entire game. Uh, this set was illustrated by Sanford Green, I think, and he knocked it out of the park. And on this character especially, this has one of my new favorite card arts in the entire game, including the card back. I really like light blue and I really like purple, and this kind of reminds me of the Sattler card back, and it's just chef's kiss. The mini also is phenomenal in real life. This kind of picture doesn't really do it too much justice, but Black Panther is literally like lunging off his base towards the opponent. Really solid. And of course we got Shuri. So yeah, and just as a reminder, if you would like to pick up this set yourself, I have the link to the Restoration Games store where you can buy it. That'll be at the top of the description. They did send me this set for free to make videos of, and so I owe them a huge debt because the set introduces a lot of really interesting things to the game, and it's really cool to be able to take a nice first look like this. So Black Panther is a melee fighter with 14 health. He has his sidekick Shuri, who is ranged with 6 health, and they share a move value of 2. So slightly underwhelming stats just to begin with. 6 health for a sidekick is like pretty much the minimum you'd expect, and Shuri in particular is very squishy, but at least she's ranged from both a mechanical and a thematic standpoint. And Black Panther, 14 health, is a little squishy, and him being melee makes absolute sense, but I think this character is fine being moved to because he is encouraged to boost a lot, and so I don't think he needed to be move 3 at all. His ability is Vibranium Suit. It says whenever you boost, draw a card. So this includes boosting attacks, blocks, and maneuvers. Whenever you boost, draw a card, and that's mandatory, not optional, so you have to do it, which is both a blessing and a curse, as most things are in this game. It means that normally boosting can kind of be a taxing toll because you're spending like 2 cards to do one thing. It's what makes Arthur, one of the things that makes Arthur really bad is that he doesn't have the card draw to support a playstyle where he just boosts everything. This does support you boosting everything because your hand size isn't decreasing because you're boosting. You're getting that card right back. So we've seen decks like T-Rex, which T-Rex always draws a card at the end of her turn, so she's able to keep up a level of aggression. Black Panther will be one of the best aggro fighters in the game in terms of like maintaining aggression throughout just because of this ability. But wait, there's more! It says cards stored in your Vibranium Suit can only be used to boost. Baked goods, you soggy old cow. What's the Vibranium Suit? Well, it's this handy dandy horizontal card. I'm still here, don't worry. And it says, when an effect lets you store a card in your Vibranium Suit, place it here so that the boost value is showing. So basically, you have ways to take cards from your opponent and add them to your Vibranium Suit. This is a bad example, but in this case, I would be adding them to my Cloak of Levitation. But anyways, you're absorbing your enemy's energy, and then you're able to reflect it back at them because you're able to boost with the cards that you take from them, which is great for many reasons. One, your opponent just doesn't have that card anymore because when you take it, it's like in this kind of purgatory where it's not in their deck, not in their discard pile, not in their hand. So they basically have no way to access it because recursion cards that take cards from their discard pile can't take it from your suit. So Wukong, Little Red, Sinbad, Daredevil, Achilles, Winter Soldier, Elektra, all characters with recursion can kind of get stunted a little bit by this if you're able to take and hold on to their key cards. But also, if you just get a bunch of high boost value cards from your opponent, you just chuck them out, and it's not costing like you resources from your deck in order to do that, which is just nuts. The possibilities with this ability are crazy, but I still do believe that this character is actually balanced despite looking really, really scary. So let's start taking a look at his cards. We're going to look at two at once because they are pretty much the same. We have Vibranium Shockwave, which is a 2-value attack. You have 2 copies of it. And we have Microwave, not Wave, Mesh. It's a 2-value block, and you have 2 copies of it. And they both say, during combat, you may boost this card. So basically, they said, well, this character probably wants cards that let him boost, so we'll give him these 2. And I like that they did it this way instead of just giving Black Panther 4 purple 2s that say you may boost this card. 1, because we get more card art, but 2, it makes him a little bit less consistent, which is good because his ability adds a lot of consistency to his kit. So I like that from like a balancing standpoint. But it's like 2 kind of separate cards, but like I said, they literally have the same during combat text. So this is kind of like a second shot, but the Muldoon version, not the Medusa version. So it's not great, but probably gonna want to boost with that if you can deal at least 2 damage. And if not, well, you probably got a good block out of your opponent, and it's decent feint bait because you have cards that you would rather not get feinted. So getting this potentially feinted is fine. And Microwave Mesh, which is a blue only, so you can only block with it. And boosting on defense is really good because you get to see what your opponent attacked you with before you boost. So if they attack you with something low, you just don't boost, you block everything. If they attack you with something big, you boost and try to mitigate as much damage as you can. And you have full information on the combat, and so your calculations are made with more information, and you can make better choices from that. Really solid card, even though, or both of these are solid cards, even though they don't necessarily look like it. And of course, getting your ability with the Vibranium suit from triggering the boosts on these cards, also nice. The next card we have is Wakanda. The next card is rather iconic, and it is Wakanda Forever, and he's doing the pose and everything. It's a 3-value versatile with a boost value of 3. We're going to pay attention to the boost values for this deck just because obviously he revolves around boosting, so those matter. You have 3 copies of it, and it says, during combat, you may boost this card up to 2 times. And remember that you draw a card for Black Panther special ability each time you boost. So if you boost this twice, you will draw 2 cards with your ability, which is nuts. So this is kind of like Big Reveal from Houdini's deck. It's like a massive, potentially finishing move to just do a bunch of damage to your opponent and just end the game by depleting their health, or you just do a big chunk of damage to them like right in the mid game. I'm assuming you're attacking with this card just because while it is a rather good block card, when I play characters like this and Houdini and Bullseye, I would rather put a bunch of resources into their attacking to try to like end the game and do what they're good at more than try to stop them from losing, I guess, if that makes sense. So when I play Black Panther, I'm always going to attack with this card unless I absolutely have to use it as a block. And usually, so it functions like Big Reveal, except Big Reveal, you can either boost exactly 0 times or exactly twice. This you can boost up to 2 times, which includes 1. Although I don't think you ever boost it just 1 time, because if you're boosting it once, you're probably going to get damage off, which is why you're boosting in the first place. So you may as well just boost it twice. So you shouldn't play this when you only have 2 cards in your hand. You should play it when you have at least 3 so that you can always boost twice. And it's rather good in that situation because if it's the 3rd card in your hand, you play it, you boost with 2 cards, and then you just draw 2 back up with Vibranium Suit. So it's like not completely wrecking your hand. This card is really good, and it can very easily get up to like 7, 8, 9 damage. So you'd much rather have Vibranium Shockwave get fainted than any Wakanda Forever. The next card is Ancestral Insight, which is one of my favorite card arts that I was talking about earlier. It's a 4-value purple, the highest printed value and only 4 in your deck. and it has a boost value of 1, so you're probably not going to want to boost with this at all, but it does have a good effect, so you wouldn't anyways. And it has 3 copies of this, and it says, after combat, if you won the combat, reveal the top card of your opponent's deck and store it in your vibranium suit. So this is one way for you to swipe a card from your opponent and tuck it away in your suit for a rainy day. And it's dependent on winning the combat with a 4-value versatile, so it's kind of like Skirmish, except with a generally better after combat ability, at least for you. And you're probably going to want to play it on defense, even though you might not win all the time, just because it is a solid block by itself, unlike Microweave Mesh, which usually will require another card to go with it for it to be good. Ancestral Insight is just like a solid 4-value block on its own, and who knows, if your opponent plays like a small or bait attack, you'll win the combat. And in some matchups like Bruce Lee or Little Red, probably a safe bet to play it on defense to get that after combat effect. But it also is a really good feint counter. I know when I was playing my testing games with Black Panther, it felt like every time I attacked with this card, it got feinted, and 2 damage over the top is always nice. Really solid card there. And the next card we have is AntiMetal Claw. It's a 1-value versatile, the boost value of 2 and 2 copies, and it says, during combat, add the boost value of the opposing fighter's card to this card's value. Then you may boost this card. So the initial sentence of that text is basically from Dracula's Look Into My Eyes, which adds the boost value of the opposing fighter's card to this card's value. But then AntiMetal Claws can skyrocket up because of the additional value you can add to it from boosting, which is nice because it's after the card's reveal and you get full information to make your educated decision. And it probably can't get as consistently high as Wakanda Forever, but it can get pretty damn high. And if you're blocking something like a beast form with this card, feel really good. And if you're attacking into something like a Looking Glass, it also feels really good. Of course, if you're attacking or blocking a card that has a boost value of 1, it isn't so great because it basically just turns into one of these, but these are already solid cards to begin with, so this card has a pretty high floor. Then we're going to talk about Shuri. So we're just going to flip both of these cards at the same time because I have like probably the hottest take of this set. We're going to talk about Shuri just because she has the scheme. It's tactical remote scanning. Choose an opponent, reveal the top 2 cards of their deck, and store them in your vibranium suit. So obviously, that card is really, really strong. You get to take 2 cards from your opponent's deck. They can't do anything about it. You add them to your suit, and now you have those cards that you can boost with, and your opponent doesn't have them. It's crazy. And you have 2 copies of it. So like, best case scenario, both copies are in your opening hand. You just play them both turn 1, and your opponent probably dies inside. But this scheme is literally the only value that I really see Shuri adding to this deck, just because her attacks aren't as good as Black Panther's, and she only has 6 health and can max value block for 3. So she is incredibly skishy. She is incredibly squishy. Words are hard. So, and she's one of the biggest targets on her back. So your opponent is probably just going to gun down Shuri right at the beginning of the game. And in my games, I felt that I was fine, like blocking one attack into Shuri and then just letting her go, because normally when that happens to your sidekick, their cards end up being dead draws, but Shuri's scheme has a boost value of 3, which is really valuable later in the game. And if your opponent is going to commit a bunch of resources into killing your sidekick at the beginning of the game, there isn't really much you can do about that except just punish them by saving your resources and just attacking them back. So like, my hot take is that Shuri is just incredibly overrated. but like rightfully so. I just think that, at least from my perspective, my Black Panther games have been successful without her. So I don't necessarily think she's crucial, although that could be just due to a very small sample size and suboptimal play because we're playing with new characters. But sure, she's ranged, but I don't think she offers too much besides this scheme. And you can still use this scheme to boost later in the game. So it's like, yeah, it's giving you 2 cards instead of just the one. But like if you take 2 of your opponent's cards and they're just like trash regroups with a boost value of 1, like, is that really that great in the long run? But of course, there's going to be the games where you take Snicker Snack and Looking Glass, and then you feel really good about yourself. And oh yeah, there's this card too. We got Nano Tri-Age Processor. Nano Triage Processor. It's a 2-value versatile for Shuri. You have 2 copies of it, boost value of 2. And it says after combat, Shuri recovers 1 health. If Black Panther is in the same zone as Shuri, he also recovers 1 health. So, like, if you're blocking with this as Shuri, you're going to take a bunch of damage because it's just a 2-value block. And the healing is, like, basically on par with, like, the rapid recovery level of mediocre healing. And if you're Shuri's at a low enough health point to begin with, and she just dies from taking combat damage over the top of this as a block card, well then she can't heal because she's dead, and then she's not in Black Panther's zone anymore because she's off the board, so he doesn't get the healing. So like, if you actually want the healing, you're gonna attack with this, which I guess like it's a win if your opponent feints that instead of like a Wakanda Forever. But it's just like mediocre. We have some any cards. We have Analyze and Adjust. It's a 3-value attack with a boost value of 3. Very important. And 3 copies. And it says after combat, reveal the top card of your opponent's deck and store it in your vibranium suit. So this is a very consistent way to get cards in your suit, just because you have more copies of this than you do Shuri's scheme. And this is not dependent on winning the combat like Ancestral Insight is. So I just noticed, do you think they meant like Ancestral Insight, like Buffy's Insight, because you're taking a card from them? I don't know. Food for thought. The neat thing about this card is that it is an any, so that Shuri can play it from range, which you can potentially surprise your opponent with. But another thing to think about is that this card has a boost value of 3. So sometimes if your win condition is damage, and I think it will be more so damage than just trying to RNG take your opponent's good cards, then I actually think the boost value can be more valuable than the actual effect, just because, like, let's say instead of boosting a Vibranium Shockwave with Analyze and Adjust, you play Analyze and Adjust and you take like a 1-value boost from their deck. Well, so now when you boost with that card later, you're kind of missing out on 2 damage, if that makes sense. So I want to say don't get super greedy when it comes to your Vibranium suit, because you don't necessarily need it in order to win. Because like your ability, you can still boost with your own cards, and you got some decent boost values straight up. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to say that the Vibranium suit is a trap, but I just think that you should not get tunnel vision on it, if that makes sense. And we have a common card. We've got Evade. It's an any 3-value block only, 2 copies, and it says after combat, draw a card. We first saw this in Bloody Mary's deck, and it's just a nice little addition. 3-value blocks are like decently solid, and the card draw is important for a character that wants to have a lot of options and maintain a healthy hand size. I will say Black Panther kind of has a little bit of a slower start than other aggro characters, and his endgame is not good, because if you play him like I play him, you draw a bunch of cards and eventually you'll deck out. But that mid game, probably like turn 2 or 3-ish, depending on if you went first or second, after you've built up a decent hand size and can finally start unloading on your opponent, you can do some pretty scary things very quickly. He is incredibly explosive with the amount of boosting he can do and the fact that he doesn't really run out of steam from doing so. So I really like card draw on a defense card like this, just to help fuel the flames of war. And next we have cat-like reflexes. So 3 value, purple any, 2 copies, and it says after combat, if you won the combat, move one of the fighters in the combat up to 3 spaces, so it can move either you or the opposing fighter. And like this is just like an alright card, just because you don't often win combat with 3 value cards. Most certainly not attacking, and in general on defense, you're probably going to get hit a little harder than just 3 damage matchup depending. So like the movement effect is nice because it's 3 spaces, you can move 2, so it's like a decent anti-range-ish card because in general their values are a little bit lower, so it's really good to close out the gap to a ranged enemy instead of having to maneuver up there first action. But in general, like I wouldn't really count on winning the combat with this on defense, and it's just like not super great as an attack, and so it's kind of just like whatever. Probably the worst card in your deck, which like it's still like a decent card, which is it's saying something. And next we have working things out. Stalking Panther. It's in any scheme. You have 3 copies of it, and it says move each of your fighters up to 3 spaces. They may move through opposing fighters. Gain 1 action. Where have I seen this before? Well, anyways, I just said that moving 3 spaces as a move 2 fighter is really good, and closing the gap between people so that you don't have to spend an action on your turn maneuvering is also really good. That's basically what this scheme does. You can move 3 spaces, gain an action, so you can set up some double attack turns. Really solid scheme. Love that you have 3 copies of it. And last but not least, we have 2 basic cards. We've got Feint and Regroup. Regroup being my favorite card in the entire game, and you have 2 copies of each of them. And Regroup isn't like even horrible in this deck just because it is a solid bait attack. It is card draw, and it has a 2 value boost, which better than a 1 value boost, but considering that 5 of your cards have 1 value boosts. I think 8 of your cards have 3 value boosts, and everything else is 2. I like the way that average is leaning. So overall, I think this character, it's like a tale of 2 panthers. It looks absolutely bonkers busted because you're taking cards from your opponent. Let's see, Ancestral Insight, that's 3, conditional. Tactical Remote Scanning, that's 4, so that's 7, and then 3 copies of this, 1 each, so that's 10. So that's 10 possible total cards that you're stealing from your opponent. So they get to play with a third of their deck. Think about like Medusa, she has 6 discards. That's a fifth of someone's deck. That's 20%. A third is 33%. This is 13% more. No, you can't use your cards, which I'm at a loss of words just because like if you've played this game, you know how good that sounds. Except I don't think it's always going to be 10 cards. Like that's the best case scenario because this is conditional. You probably are going to get like 2 at most of these. And this is also conditional on you drawing this card on turn 1 or 2 and then playing it before Shuri gets nuked into oblivion. So like I think in most games it's going to be like 3 or 4, which is fine. It's fine. That's like on par with some other discard decks like Yanenga even. And obviously there's going to be those games where like you take all 3 of Medusa's Gazes of Stones and maybe a Hiss and Slither and a Momentary Glance. You just get all their best cards, all their high boost values, and you just wreck them. And then there's also going to be games where you take like regroup and a feint that they didn't care about, and like, I don't know, some other dumb card that they don't need with a low boost value. And I think overall it's going to average out and be completely fine. And so when you're looking at this character, not thinking about that kind of like, I don't want to say impossible best case scenario, but like you're definitely inflating how consistent he can add cards to his vibranium suit. I think he's fine. I think he's gonna be like Houdini, who is like, let's be honest, he's high mid tier. I think he'll be a little bit worse than Houdini just because teleportation, set the stage, misdirection, big reveal, sleight of hand, all part of the show. Like, I'm naming his cards, and you know exactly what I mean by when I nod my head. But Black Panther is going to be a ton of fun to play, and in certain matchups, he's going to be an absolute menace. There will be certain games where he just explodes and just boost, Wakanda Forever, Claw, working things out, just draw a bunch of cards, and that is the Black Panther that I am looking forward to playing, because that sounds like a ton of fun, and I will be wrecking everyone at the bottom of silver with him next season of Ladder. This character is probably going to be like low B, but S tier in my heart. So yeah, those are my initial impressions of Black Panther. I am very curious to know what you think of this character, so please let me know in the comments. Let me know what your favorite card is of his. Let me know what you think of my Shuri take when I said that she's like the most overrated sidekick in the game and that she isn't really crucial to your game plan at all, because I'm sure that sounds blasphemous to some people just because of the existence of TRS. Let me know what you think of my AntiMetal Claws, and yeah, have a great rest of your night. The Black Widow deck overview, first impression. I was like, what is this segment called? The Black Widow first impressions video will be out after this one. The Winter Soldier one's already available, as is the just general set overview, so go check those out if you want more sweet deets and sneak peeks for King and Country. And remember, there is a link at the top of the description to go to the Restoration Games store and buy this set for yourself. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and